This is a Freytag's pyramid, a diagram for a plot structure created by this guy named Freytag. Now, when I saw this in English class, my first thought was, oh, what a wonderful way to illustrate the methods of plot. No, instead, my first thoughts were, oh, wait a second, this isn't really much like any story. The climax isn't at the middle, the climax is at pretty much the end, and then you relax. And every single plot I see really doesn't look like a pizza, it looks kind of like this. Now, there's a technical reason why this setup is like this, is the Freytag pyramid. These words map close to this, where the catastrophe is still like here. But seeing this Freytag's pyramid got me thinking about tension in plots and stories, and how it'd be easy to visualize them. And I think I came up with a really cool writing trick to help visualize a story's plot. Well, what do I mean? Well, in an ideal form of story, well, let's say this is a graph, and this down here is time, and this over here is tension. Then the ideal form of plot is going to be what my other English teacher called the inverted check mark, with a gradual increase of tension over the length of the story, and then after the climax, a short release wrapping up the story, and then it ends. However, most stories with the tension and time don't look like this. It's kind of hard to explain, so I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to diagram a plot of a movie you've probably seen, and that is The New Hope. Now, I want to say something real quick. I'm going to diagram multiple stories in this videos, and it's been a while since I've read/seen them, so I might not get everything perfect. So don't yell at me. Even if I may mess something up, or you disagree with where I categorize something, I think this will be a clear exercise and will be useful in your own plotting methods. Alright, let's get started. Episode 1 starts right out the gate tense with a rebel blockade runner being boarded and the stormtroopers slaughtering the crew members, and Princess Leia gets captured. The droids only narrowly escape. But then the tension decreases somewhat. They land safely. They get captured by the Jawas, but that tension is easily resolved with them getting bought by Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker discovers Princess Leia, and tension gets up as this Obi-Wan Kenobi is the only hope. R2-D2 runs away, and when Luke goes after him, he gets attacked by the Tusken Raiders, but that is easily resolved when Obi-Wan comes and saves him. They have some talking, which is through this, and Luke learns about his father, and Obi-Wan invites him to go on an adventure. Luke refuses, and they decide to go off, but they see the Jawas slaughtered by the sand troopers, and tensions increase. Tensions increase higher when Luke finds out his aunt and uncle's been murdered. They release somewhat when they head to Mos Eisley to buy a ship, but then it steadily increases when they meet Han Solo, and we know about the spy and the Greedo incident stuff. It really picks up when Millennium Falcon narrowly escape from both the spaceport and the Star Destroyer. Tension eases as we have a nice Jedi training scene in the cabin. Now, I know there's some parts with Princess Leia in here, but just to be simple, I'm going to leave these out. I don't remember exactly where they go. Anyway, they pull into the Alderaan system and realize something is wrong. And it's no moon, it's a space station. The ship gets tractor beamed, but this quickly gets resolved. They're safe, and they go hide in the whatever room it was, I don't remember. Anyway, Obi-Wan decides to go shut down the tractor beams, and they would have stayed except they heard Princess Leia was going to die. So they break her out. And that doesn't go as planned, and after a little blip down, they fall into the trash compactor. They have the escape out, all the firefights that follow, Obi-Wan gets killed, and they have the fight with the TIE fighters. Then they make it to the rebel base, and things relax. Things are going pretty good. And holy cow, the Death Star just showed up. The entire Rebel Alliance is doomed. They send out Han leaves, they send out the X-Wings. It's a complete slaughter, lots of fighters are getting killed. Luke's friends die. The gold leader takes a shot, but misses. Luke goes in, Darth Vader closes in intent on killing him. Han, real quick, returns and stops Darth Vader. And Luke decides to trust the Force, and with only seconds left, blows up the Death Star. The rebels are victorious, and they fly home to have a nice celebration. And it is the beginning of a new era of the rebellion. And that's pretty much the story. You see, it follows pretty well the inverted check mark, with a gradual build of tension, and then the climax. And this is how a story is supposed to be, with a gradual increase of stakes. Maybe not as steep as I drew it here. More like that. Gradual increase of tension, and then the climax, and then a little resolution here. Now, if you notice that this story doesn't match perfectly, it goes up and down a lot, and that's good because if your story kept getting tense and tense and tense, that would work very fine for a short story. But for longer stories, you need breaks to give your audience some time to relax. And these little breaks, you don't have to be boring. You can fill them in with interesting lore details or reflections. It's just, you can't just keep running up and up and up like this instead of this, or you'd give your reader a heart attack. Another thing you can do in these dips is use a tension release in something else to increase tension in another subplot. You can have more than one of these squiggles if you have multiple viewpoint characters, or you have an external plot and internal viewpoint plot. Take in Star Wars, there's an argument to be made that there's a little plot about Luke learning to trust the Force, and if I draw it with blue, it's not going to look like an inverted check mark. But if you notice this, look. This dip is where Force is a little bit, and then you have a little jump. And this dip where Ben is talking to Luke and in his house. It increases a little bit over seeing what Ben does, but there's another big blip where they train in the Millennium Falcon's cabin. I would argue there's another big blip where when Obi-Wan dies, it's just a little blip, and then there's a final ramp of tension when Luke decides to trust in the Force and not use his targeting computer. Now, this isn't a perfect inverted check mark, but it works, and you see here, it maps pretty well on the times where there's slow parts. And some people do it really well, like Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings. He can have a slow part with one character's story, and then he goes with another. Now I'm going to diagram you a story that doesn't exactly get it right. And a lot of people criticize this story for its beginning, and that's the first book of the Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Now, well, on one hand, there's an argument to be made that we sometimes have to read things that are boring to get to the good stuff. But on the other hand, I can kind of see where people come from with the Fellowship of the Ring. I'm going to diagram the first book of the Fellowship of the Ring all the way ring, and you'll see what I mean. Lord of the Rings starts out pretty exciting with Bilbo's birthday party and Gandalf convincing him to give up the ring to Frodo. Bilbo goes on one last adventure, is never seen again. Bilbo and Gandalf talk, and then Gandalf leaves. Then we have, Gandalf comes back again and talks with Bilbo some more. There's some strange things going on, and Gandalf goes to investigate. Eventually Bilbo gets the letter telling him that he needs to leave to, is it Bree, or is it somewhere else? Let me check real quick. Actually, correction, Gandalf's there and tells him that he should leave to go to Buckland. Pippin, and Sam start going. They run into black raiders, and then meet elves. And then we have a little bit with Farmer Maggot, but then it relaxes quickly when they get mushrooms to go to Bilbo's new house in Buckland. You have the Conspiracy Unmasked, which is a little blip, but not much, and then they eat the mushrooms and have a nice day, talk to Fatty Bulger, the unsung hero of Fellowship of the Ring, and Frodo sings his bath song. Then the Black Raiders come and they escape into the old forest. Old Man Willow starts attacking. Tom Bombadil saves them. They go to the house of Tom Bombadil for a couple of days. They start out again and get captured by the Bear Whites. They make it to Bree and the Prancing Pony. There's the whole ring fiasco in the song. There's a ton of songs in Tolkien. They meet Aragorn, or as he's called at first, Strider. You have the attack on the inn, but they escape it. There's a little bit of traveling, but then tension wraps up when Frodo gets stabbed at Weathertop. This is the part where it gets more interesting, as we have a couple blips, but it steadily goes up into the Flight of the Fjord. And then finally there's a resolution with Council of Elrond, and that's the big end of the first book. But if you compare it to the inverted check marks, or even what The New Hope does, it starts really slow and doesn't get nearly exciting as the other ones. Now, does that mean Lord of the Rings is a bad story? No. One more example of a bad story before I show you how you can apply this to help your writing. This story is really bad, and it's just kind of funny. So for a project I'm working on, I wanted to read I think it's written in the 60s children's book about the comic character the Phantom. Well, it's about the Phantom's son, which the Phantom is a job that passes on from father to son, but I digress. Anyway, the story can be summed up as there's no conflict, there's no tension, there's nothing. There's a little blip because it's about the Phantom's son leaving home to learn things in America, and there's a blip, but then nothing happens. There's no struggle, he just does good in his school. There's the only tense parts is there's a couple times where there's kind of a bit of a tense action of a football fight, but I didn't even get it. I'm not into football, so it's just Now, I'm getting towards the end, and he's returned home, and so there might be another blip to close the story, but compared to this story, Lord of the Rings is downright exciting. So I know what you're thinking. These lines are all well and good, but how is this going to help with my story? And here, let me give you an example. This is one of my own stories, a children's series, which I'm going to write one day, but I do have a problem, and I'll show you kind of what it is. So it starts off going pretty action-packed. A little bit of break. Happens again. There's big tension. A little break. Then there's a gradual climb. There are some spikes, but nothing as drastic as the other stories. Until there's one big spike, and then it drops. Then it slowly kind of goes up, and really goes up, and goes really down, and then there's a little bit of time. Then for the climax, I try to drag it all the way up, and end it. Now, what is wrong with this? You kind of see what's wrong with this, and this is really rough view. There's some more nuance, but what's wrong with it? Well, these two sections right here are really, really low. And this one here is kinda like the drop when Luke Skywalker gets back to the Rebel base. But not really, because this goes down and then goes straight back up, where there's a little bit of a break here. And my story ends up being rather jerky. Now, I knew what was happening before I discovered this line method, but this is another useful way to help you figure out. You don't even have to draw the line, just think about your story as a line going up, with the tensions making it go up and up. And how close does it match this ideal story at an inverted check mark? Because if it is an inverted check mark like this, your readers might lose interest. Now, it doesn't have to look like this, because if everything was exactly like this, everything would be formulaic and boring. You have some room for errors. Just don't give your audience whiplash going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Well, that's about all I have to say. Thank you for watching this video to the end. I hope you learned something. And sorry if I messed up any of the plot lines. I'm a little bit rusty. If I do, make sure to correct me in the comments. Or if you disagree with how I mapped them, let me know in the comments, and maybe you all can get into a nice friendly debate over it. I heard comments are great for video engagement. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.